Probably kill that chopper. He's going low and slow. He's over there. He's right above us now. Now he's right near the left. There you go.
What's going on, guys, in the works, and how about these next-gen graphics? And if you're looking at the screen saying, what on earth is going on, I can assure you there's no problem, because today we are going to be taking a look at one of the new tank optics in Battlefield 4, the IRNV. Now, the IRNV optic was actually introduced as a new thing in Battlefield 4, because in Battlefield 3 you only really had the choice of zoom optics, and it wasn't the same setup. You know, you actually had to give up one of the other things to get zoom optics. Whereas this, they've split it into three categories, where now you can either choose the zoom optics, the IRNV, and the thermal optics. And I don't see a lot of people using the IRNV. In fact, a lot of the people I've talked to who are big tankers say they pretty much prefer the zoom optics in every scenario. Well, I agree with them for the most part. There are a lot of maps where I would just say, just run zoom optics. There's really no reason to run the IRNV or the thermal. But on maps like Zavad or maps like Dawnbreaker, where it's a little bit harder to pick people out, you know, it's a little bit darker in certain areas, especially Zavad, it is very difficult to pick people out of the trees and the brush and all the clutter that's around the map. And I've actually found that the IRNV makes that a little bit simpler, especially since infantry is really your biggest threat, especially on the first, you know, points there. You know, you're working this flag like I'm on here, which is actually a little bit older. This is from about a month and a half ago when I first started tanking with the IRNV. I think I'm running light machine gun action on this, when I actually prefer the heavy machine gun because it is a little bit more versatile. But this is an infantry based loadout because I am using the AP shell, so I'm not loaded to go up against, you know, other tanks in terms of like using the staff shell, because I know that is the big thing these days. So I am purely an infantry loadout because I am using the AP shell. And you can see that there's a lot of situations where I'm looking into the train cars where I normally wouldn't necessarily see the person, but due to the fact that I have the IRNV on, I'm able to pick them out of the scenery and pick up the kill. And I actually find it to be very, very useful. I see a lot of people rely on the zoom optics, and I don't feel like maps like Zavad really benefit that much from using zoom optics. I think in most situations you're better off just focusing on killing infantry, and then when a tank or an LAV comes up on you, you've got your AP shell to deal with them. Now, one counter I have found to that would be to use the high explosive shell, the HE shell. It makes it a lot easier to take out vehicles. So if you're wanting to have your infantry loadout with the IRNV and then your light or heavy machine gun, you'll have the HE shell to kind of counter other vehicles. It'll give you an advantage over them. But it does have substantial drops. So oftentimes I will run the Sabo round, and then I'll have the IRNV with my machine gun of choice as my secondary. So there's a lot of different combinations you can work with. In particular, thermal. I feel like I can't do this video without mentioning thermal, since it is the alternative to the IRNV. If you look at the battle log description of this particular optic, it says that it's better for close to medium ranges, to picking out people who are barely peeking over a ledge, or perhaps they're just hiding in some brush and stuff like that. Whereas with thermal, it's supposed to show the heat signatures across all ranges. There's not supposed to be any sort of limitations to the thermal optics. But I just find that it's way too bright on a lot of maps to even make use of the thermal. It's almost like you're looking into that, and excuse me, Mr. LAV, it seems like you're just looking into the surface of the sun, and that may play back into the fact that maybe I have my brightness up a little bit much. Maybe if I'm using thermal, I need to tone it back a little bit. But in most situations, since I do play a little bit more aggressive with my tanks, I like to cap flags, so I think that's what they're best for. I find myself just relying on the IRNV. It's a lot easier to pick out the signatures of people, figure out where they're at, because, you know, as a tanker, one of the most annoying things probably is the MBT law. It's very difficult to figure out where that thing is coming from, just because of the route it travels and the fact that it just kind of locks onto you. So a lot of times, like, you see me getting hit here, I don't really know where they're at. But because I've got the IRNV on, I can see when they poke around corners or their arm is just barely around a corner. I know where they're at. I'm anticipating them reloading that law, and I'm able to take out a couple of people I probably wouldn't have seen before I get destroyed here. So I actually considered that a pretty successful run. You know, I probably would have died a lot quicker because I wouldn't have seen where those guys were, and I would have gotten taken out. Now, the different optics aren't just available to the tank driver. The secondary gunner can actually choose them as well. And this is where I think it gets a little bit interesting, because I think it's very useful as the secondary gunner to run IRNV for several reasons. First of all, you don't have to get penalized, I guess to say, as the main tank driver because you kind of have to deal with vehicles sometimes. As the main tank driver, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be dealing with vehicles, and sometimes the IRNV can actually distract you during tank battles. I've had it happen to me a lot of times. Whereas as the gunner, your main focus is infantry. That's what you're doing. You're thinning the herd of people that are swarming at your tank, trying to C4 you, trying to RPG you. So it makes it a lot easier on your tank driver when you're focusing on that. Another big advantage is you can help your tank driver spot mines and spot slams, because slams are very apparent when you're using IRNV. And I don't know how many times I've been using it and I've looked down and I've seen a slam that I normally wouldn't see just because it's kind of glowing. It kind of has this like weird hue to it that, you know, normally the slam is brown, it just kind of blends in, whereas with the IRNV it makes it a lot easier to pick out where those stupid things are, because they are very difficult to see. So in my experiences, I actually find the IRNV is a great choice if you're going to be a secondary gunner, because like I said, your main goal is keeping your tank safe. You want to keep the C4 guys off you. You want to spot people for your main tank driver, and he's going to go out there and probably hunt them down, as you see Viking doing here. I'm just spotting these guys. I have a really great view of where everyone's at. I can see them poking their heads over the walls, and I've never really been a huge fan of the zoom optics on the secondary tank anyways, or the secondary gunner that is, just because you're not really outfitted to shoot people at longer ranges. It's actually a little bit more difficult as the secondary gunner to kill people, so you're better off focusing on close range. I think IRNV works a lot better in that scenario. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Try it out. If you haven't tried it, it might work for your playstyle. Like I said, it is limited to some maps. I prefer it more on like Zavad or the darker maps. But, you know, it works on a lot of different maps depending on what you're going to be doing in your tank. But if you missed my past videos, here's a chance to catch up, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.